Okay, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thank you so much for
Morning.
joining us today. We have this fantastic panel of experts. We're super excited about this. 914 Inc. is hosting and presenting this discussion on how to keep businesses surviving and hopefully thriving during the COVID economic crisis that we're all facing here. Again, we are thrilled to have everyone join us today, and we want to thank you for your participation. We are going to be featuring this discussion in our pages of our February-March issue, and then this discussion will be live on our website for our audience to enjoy. So I'm going to turn it over to Wiley. Thank you again, Wiley, for agreeing to moderate our discussion, and can't wait to hear what everyone has to say.
All right, thank you, Amy, very much, and thank you, 914 Inc. for sponsoring this seminar or forum. Like myself, I'm sure there's many Westchester businesses that have experienced or in the middle of COVID-19, and we have a lot of questions about our future businesses and how to operate them successfully going forward. We're honored today to have 5 experts in various fields. One is IT, marketing, banking, insurance, and law, employment law, excuse me. And we're going to speak to each one of them. I want to introduce them to you one at a time, and then I'm going to engage them in some conversation that might help you in your businesses. First will be John TOLOMER. John is the president and CEO of the Westchester Bank and the Westchester Bank Holding Corporation. John joined Westchester Bank in November of 2008 when assets totaled $23 million, and it steered the bank growth to assets reaching over $1 billion as of today. John presently serves also on the board of the New York State Bankers Association and is a member of the New York State Department of Financial Services Advisory.
It was supposed to be Jackson Lewis.
We don't have one.
Okay.
Okay, then maybe just blank screen.
Okay, Susan Cochran. Good people, smart lady. You guys are going to be benefit from hearing her. Susan is the principal in the workforce law firm of Jackson Lewis, helping employers devise positive solutions to employee issues. Susan and her firm also defends and represents employers on a variety of employment and labor-related matters. Such suits and charges related to discrimination, harassment, retaliation, wage hour violations, and COVID-related claims. Wow, isn't that timely? Non-compete matters and many other workplace issues. Please welcome Susan. Our next speaker will be STACEY Cohen. STACEY is the CEO of Co-Communications, an award-winning PR and marketing agency with offices in White Plains, Hartford, Connecticut, and New York City. STACEY specializes in perfecting and building business and personal brands, and earned her stripes on Madison Avenue and CBS before she founded Co-Communications in 1998. STACEY is a TEDx speaker, and yes, I did say TEDx speaker, and please, I welcome you guys to visit her. It's extremely interesting and engaging. STACEY is also a writer at heart, a contributing blogger for Huffington Post, Media, and Fried Global, and in the midst of a new book process. Welcome, STACEY.
Thank you, Wiley.
My pleasure, STACEY. JOANNE Murray. JOANNE Murray has been the owner of Allan Block Insurance Agency since 1991, a business that started in 1959. That agency is an independent insurance agency representing 12 major insurance carriers and are licensed in 23 states. STACEY is past president twice of the Westchester Independent Agents Association and has served on many local boards, including the Tarrytown Music Hall, the Sleepy Hollow Tarrytown Chamber of Commerce, and Kendall-on-the-Hudson. And last but not least is James KUDLA. He is the president of Tarrytech Community Consultants. James has a degree in mechanical engineering from Binghamton University and holds many IT certificates. His company, Tarrytech, has been serving New York metro area clients for the past 17 years and has been on the Inc. 5,000 list of the fastest growing companies in North America for the past 3 years. Congratulations on that, James.
Thank you.
Quite an achievement. Okay, we're gonna get started now, okay? So first up today, we're gonna talk to John. John, oh, by the way, John, you guys may not recognize John from TV. He does an amazing commercial with his bank all the time, representing community and small businesses and their interactions. So you gotta recognize John. He's a star in our community on TV. So John, tell us a little bit about the banking. What is Westchester Bank doing differently, or in addition to support small businesses during this crisis? For example, keeping customers informed, waiving any fees, can we open accounts remotely, defer loan payments? What's going on at Westchester Bank?
Well, thank you, Wiley. I appreciate the kind words, especially concerning the commercial. And the commercials do not have any scripts. It's strictly the customers, myself, and their employees that we highlight. And it's really an opportunity for us to highlight small, medium-sized businesses here in Westchester. What our slogan when we founded the bank, we thought it was really important to have a community bank. We thought there was room for another community bank where we could be involved with small, medium-sized businesses, and also a full suite of product for consumers as well. So our slogan was banking made personal. And we really feel that that's not just a slogan, it's really a way of life, and it's the way our employees and the way we do business. And I think one of the things that we wanted, what this did for us, is it really gave us the opportunity. The pandemic did it. Can you have a silver lining in a cloud? And the answer is maybe we should mute some of the people. And it gave us an opportunity to live banking made personal. We used to do it in person, and what we found was that we couldn't do it in person because of the pandemic, but it didn't deter us. So we were able to contact every one of our business customers who were borrowers, first and foremost, to see, unlike a big bank that would be calling to say, are you going to make your payment? We were asking, how can we help you get through this? And this was before PPP. This was the onset of the pandemic. And we also then contacted every one of our depository customers and cash management customers to see how we could go about helping them. And so it really was it was a manifestation of our slogan, which is banking made personal. And so that was really important. And what happened was our customers really responded to it. So as the pandemic got worse, we were able to really tell our customers about how they could do their banking remotely without having to come in. And that created a great relief. So whether it was scanning their deposits to the bank or using mobile apps to deposit to the bank or go to the ATM or the night depository, we had remedies for them to continue to have banking made personal. And that's really what sets a community bank apart from a larger bank. Is just not built to do those things. And so to this day, we continue to contact our customers to see how we can help them, both on the depository side, but also on the lending side. PPP came along, if you remember, the Payroll Protection Program in early April. And that was really a challenge because we had so many customers that really wanted to avail themselves to the program. And we were fortunate. We did upwards of $85 million in PPP loans and saved about 7,000 to 7,500 jobs. And that was also an important part of what a community bank does. And we were able to help both for-profits and not-for-profits. And so that continues to be our focus, is to reach out to our customers, to be proactive, for us to make the first move to talk to our customers to see how we can help them. And that's what we believe sets everybody, all of the banks talk about that sort of a model, but the reality is it's who gets to execute it. And if we execute every day, every customer interaction, then we're setting ourselves apart. And that's how our assets went from $23 million to, over $1.2 billion in the 12-year span. So we know it works. We know we're an important part. We try to be an important part of the fabric of this community. And that's how we have tried to help not-for-profits in a myriad of ways to enrich the lives of the people we have the pleasure to serve here in Westchester.
Thank you for that, John. I can also attest to the community bank philosophy. You guys work magic around here. You guys, I have a lot of clients that are small businesses, and the word is that small business, small banks are where we want to be going forward. Our next panelist to educate us is James. James, how can small businesses be more cyber resilient in the COVID-19 world? Remember, funds are tight for us also, okay? James, you're on mute, James. You're on mute, yeah.
There we go.
Over there, gonna edit it. Okay.
See, even the IT guy can forget to unmute. Thank you, 914 Inc. for having me today and for letting me share some of my thoughts on this. So cybersecurity is a big deal. Obviously, in the beginning of the pandemic, it was a bit of survival mode, and that was for Tarrytech as well. Tarrytech is well set up. We have most of the tools in place, whether it's voice over IP systems. Some of the tools that we use to work remotely were already in place. I don't know if you guys are familiar with some of the messaging platforms that are out there, whether it's Slack or Microsoft Teams. That was important, and we had that stuff in place. And being an IT company, we're pretty well versed in that kind of thing. We're very fortunate that the tools and products that we use to deliver our services are accessible from anywhere, anytime. From really any device, and we've always been very security conscious, when we were implementing these things for Tarrytech and when we were designing these things from the start. We use what's called SaaS solutions, software as a service, which means that's a whole discussion unto itself. But largely, it means that your applications are hosted in the cloud, and you're not dependent upon a server or a single location to get access to your tools and systems. So, the voice over IP, the email, the messaging, the file sharing, the remote control, the remote access, and some of the ticketing and tool systems that we had in place, they were in place, and we're well versed in that. So we've always been versatile and able to pivot to working remotely. We were able to work remotely as well, being that we're an essential business. I think we had less restrictions, but we needed to do so safely. So we still had to figure out how we were going to work remotely. That being said, we're in a good place to help our clients who, were finding themselves, some of our clients, 30, 40, 50 people are coming into the office every day, and that's part of their culture, and that's part of the way that they work. And sometime mid-March, everyone had to just transition to working from home. So we went into what we were calling survival mode, not just for Tarrytech, because there's a lot of unknowns, in the economy, and oh my gosh, what are my clients going to need and what are they going to do? And obviously from the health crisis standpoint. So we got ourselves set up, but then we were able to quickly help our clients. And again, a lot of our tool set were set up so that we can help them remotely. But people were trying to figure out, how do I work from home? How do I get access to my programs? How am I going to communicate? How do we do, even video conferencing? I mean, so many people didn't even use things like Zoom and GoToMeeting before. If they did, it was sparingly. So we had to help our clients transition from working in the office to working remotely and get them up and running, with the major things. I mean, some of the things were nice to have, but some things were absolutely, we need access to our inventory systems, our billing systems, our communications. How do we communicate with each other? So we're able to pivot, help them pivot pretty quickly with some of the tools that we had in place and that sort of thing. And it was a crazy couple of weeks, and my team is amazing, and they were able to deliver, and some long days, but by and large, by the end of the first few days, our clients were pretty much up and running. So somewhat out of the fire, but I'm sure that you've seen the news stories and you've seen the statistics. but cyber crime and cyber threats are up significantly since the beginning of the pandemic. And it's because the bad actors, I mean, it's really a business, right? Whether or not you know it, you are a target. And it doesn't mean you're a direct target. Sometimes it's passive, you're a passive target, and they're just looking for systems and networks that are open, you know, so they're sending out millions of threats out there, and they're going to find some open doors that are out there. They know that people have transitioned to working from the office to working from home, and people weren't prepared to do that overnight. So there's obviously some threats that exist out there, some exposure that exists out there. So in regards to what you can do, I know that's a long tee up to get to the question that you asked, what you can do. In my opinion, the most important thing that a business can do, whether you're small or you're large, and we see this across, you know, all client sizes, or all company sizes, I should say, is that you have to have a cybersecurity plan. It all starts with a plan 100%. And by that, I mean, you need, and it doesn't need to be extensive. It doesn't have to be a 50-page document, but it needs to start with the decision makers and the leaders in the company deciding on how are we going to work remotely, or how are we going to address some of these cyber threats or some of these cyber exposures while working remotely. So you need to have conversations about things like, what are acceptable methods that we're going to allow people to work remotely? Is it going to be go to my PC? Is it going to be log me in? Is it going to be a VPN with remote desktop? And because what happens is, actually, let me come back to that point, but you have to address how you're going to work remotely. You have to address what messaging programs you're going to use. Are you going to allow Slack? Is it excuse me, is it going to be Teams? You have to figure out, how are we going to share files? Is it okay to send sensitive information via email? Can we use personal Dropbox accounts and be able to share files? Or are we going to require people to save all the information on the company file server and access this information over a VPN? You need to discuss your voice over IP phone systems. All of these things, you need to have a conversation, because this is what happens. People go home, your teams, they want to be productive, they want to be efficient. They don't realize that by introducing some workarounds, that they're actually opening up your company to cybersecurity threats. Another one that I neglected to mention is two-factor authentication. Are you going to require two-factor authentication to remote into your computers, to access your email, to access your files? Because what happens, people create workarounds to help them be efficient, to get their job done. And just to use the example of remote access. Say, for example, I know that if I set up, log me in or go to my PC on my office computer, I did it. I can work remotely. I can access my stuff, good for me. But you may not realize that all of your entire network security, you just reduced it to a single username and a password. Is that okay? And I'm going to go so far as to say it's not. Is it a complex password? Two-factor authentication would certainly need to be implemented there. So some of these touch points on your network, people don't realize how easily they are to be compromised, how easy it is to gain access to your systems and information. And most companies don't even have anything in place to monitor that, so you wouldn't even know it. So you have to start with a policy and then take it from there to start to implement some of these, what we call controls, to close some of these loopholes, to close down the cyber threats.
Thank you. Thank you, James. I'm going to come back to you in a little bit because I have a couple of follow-ups that I want to kind of circle around and get a little bit from everybody, and then come back with some follow-up. Okay.
Yep.
Susan Cochran, how are you?
Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you now.
Oh, great.
How you doing?
Good. James, that is exhausting. But that is so valuable in, particularly to what I do. I'm an employment lawyer. I work for a workplace law firm. And certainly back in March, that was very, very imperative for what every employer had to do, is make sure they put in place an important plan that helped secure data and helped, make sure that it was properly communicated to all employees, their workforce, what exactly was going to be their plan if they could actually have their employees work remotely. And so that was very, very valuable information that everyone's provided so far, and what we're going to hear also too by the rest of the panelists.
And James, we're going to want to learn a little bit more about your two-factor access and what kind of
That's important. That is definitely important, and I would like to come back to that. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that was a really interesting point. Susan, what are some of the legal challenges small businesses are currently facing when it comes to their workforce these days? What's going on? What's different? What are our vulnerabilities? What do we need to, kind of hedge against and stuff like that?
Sure. I mean, in particular for the small business person, what we're faced with is changing times, and a lot of small businesses don't have the benefit of the basics, and the basics being strong communications. Some have relied upon strong relationships over the years with their employees, but maybe not strong communications, maybe not strong written policies, maybe not strong communications over the years about how people have performed in their jobs. And what's happened is because people have had to work remotely, is we've had changed expectations in now how we've had to do things. Or maybe a particular business is an essential business and people have returned to the workplace sooner than other businesses. We've had changes in the way that we've been doing things. So I think that's, at least based upon my observation, some of the challenges smaller businesses have faced versus larger businesses. The other thing too is just, pure, smaller businesses have been hit harder than larger businesses, and making that tough decision of who may have to be laid off or furloughed. Those are some of the observations that I've seen.
Are we vulnerable to employees or customers catching COVID? How do we protect ourselves against that kind of risk from a legal point of view?
Sure. Well, I think just in general, every workplace is different, but certainly, everyone has been required to follow the governor's plan and put in safety plans in place and so forth before, they can have individuals return back to work. And there's, different leave policies in place and so forth. And the number one thing that employers have to remember too is they have to be a lot more flexible than they have been in the past with respect to individuals who perhaps may not necessarily want to return back to work, given a particular reason and so forth. You've given me a very, very loaded question, but it all goes back to employers have to have safety plans in place, and there's a lot of information on the governor's website, on New York Forward and so forth. And but it all starts with an employer's safety plan and putting very stringent practices in place and making sure that when an employee when they do come back to work, they fill out a certification form that has important questions they have to answer every day and so forth. So there's a lot of good rules in place to make sure that employees feel safe coming back to work, including making sure that they have their mask when they return back to work.
Okay. JOANNE, good morning again. It is time for a review of my insurance policies. What should I be considering? Things like business interruption, communicable and infectious disease coverage, civil authority coverage. I did some reading about insurance before I got on here, and I said to myself, do I have all these insurance policies? And what insurance do I have? And what don't I have? And what might I need going forward? Can you help us out with that? You're on mute, JOANNE. You're on mute.
Okay, I'm going to piggyback on what James was talking about, because the most important thing that a small business can have right now is cyber insurance. Since March, there have been an increase of 300% in claims that are coming in. With more people working remotely, and as James said, they may not have the security. The hackers are having a great time hacking into the small businesses. And it's easy to do because they're more vulnerable. So, people don't realize that hackers make a living being a hacker. They sit there on their couch and they're doing several businesses at one time. So having cyber insurance is really important. And I'm just going to concentrate on the cyber insurance, because that's the one thing many small businesses are lacking. A lot of them never purchased it because they felt they were too small to be hit. They couldn't afford it. They have an IT team, or they have backup. These are things that you can use after you're hit, but you need to have the cyber liability coverage in place to protect yourself when it does happen. And unfortunately, it's more likely when it will happen and not if it will happen, because it's I see James shaking his head, because it's definitely becoming a huge issue, especially for small businesses. So, what will the cyber liability do for you? It will notify customers, because you are legally obligated to do that if you are hacked. It will help you purchase credit monitoring. It will investigate how the hacker got in, provide PR damage for negative social media news that gets out there, and reimbursing first or third parties for lost revenue, business income, paying ransomware. The last thing you want to do is pay the ransomware yourself, because now you've just given your bad actor access to your personal information. So you need to have insurance to protect you. The cyber liability has first party, which protects you and the data breaches to your network. Third party to help with the damage that you might do to a client's network or system. And this is just something that we can't stress enough to our customers, the importance of adding this to your portfolio.
Can you talk a little bit about the elephant in the room, cost? Is it expensive? A lot of small businesses like myself, we're dealing with less revenues these days, and trying to more expenses as we prepare PPE stuff. And
for a small business, it is not expensive. And I urge everyone to talk to their insurance agent, get the cost, and you can buy what you need. That it's not a cookie cutter agreement that says you have to have all of these coverages. If you don't need certain coverages, you don't have to buy them. So you can customize it to what you need and make it affordable. And when you get that customization from your agent, you can look at it and say, all right, I can only afford to do this or this, and and pick out the most vulnerable situations that might put you out of business, because that's exactly what it can do. It can bring down your business.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Stacy. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you. Hi, Wiley.
Hi, Stacy.
How are you?
I'm excellent. It's a Friday afternoon, and I have literally nothing to do on the weekends these days, so I get to go home and rest.
Or play golf.
In the cold. So, Stacy, you and I hang out all the time in business networking meetings, and we're used to meeting people and shaking hands and making contacts immediately and trying to build those relationships and things like that. What can companies do these days differently, knowing that human interaction is not really possible to meet new people? We still need to market and sell our products, and we have our current clients, but we always need new clients to sustain our businesses. Help us out.
Sure. And it's really interesting, because probably during the course of our days, we hear the word pivot like at least 25 times. So here's the thing, change, we all know that change is the constant. And in fact, my mantra for 2020, which will continue to 2021, is we all know how, we'll say, well, if you keep doing the same thing, you'll get the same result. We're in an environment now, if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get stuck in reverse. and you don't want to be there. So really, you know, in marketing, we talk about competitive advantage. Truly, the new competitive advantage is about innovation and change. And so with that being said, you know, when we look at the pandemic, it has created really dizzying shifts in consumer behavior. Both small and large businesses need to understand and address the changing needs of their clients, of their customers, and then adapt their communication strategies accordingly. And another thing I think we all really need to pay close attention to is for the last decade, it's been all about the millennials. Now there is a Gen Z takeover. And if some of you don't know, Gen Z is the cohort between 1994 and 1995 to 2010. And this makes up about 20% of the US population. So we're gonna have to pay attention to these folks. They are the true digital natives. And interestingly enough, they're most racially and ethnically diverse cohorts. So we have to know to market to them. The other thing is that businesses really need to reconsider their product and service offerings to better serve their target audience. Because at the bottom line is it's about staying relevant. And the other thing is, and you brought this up, you know, we're all craving this human-to-human connection, you know, this networking. And as businesses, how do we figure out, how can we create and deliver more personalized experiences? You know, and an example is as a Westchester-based law firm that we work with, we've been working with them for about 10 years. One of our main focuses was booking speaking engagements for them. So our speaking engagements, they were out until the end of 2020. And obviously all the marketing plans in March for our clients went out the window. And so we had to, I'm going to use the word pivot. We had to pivot very quickly. And so we changed our strategy to a virtual education program, which was a Facebook weekly live streaming. And you know, the results have been phenomenal. The great thing is about these webinars, of course, is that they are all recorded. And to date, we have about 15,000 views, which, you know, we're very, very proud of. And last but not least is we will see an increased focus on strategic partnerships and collaboration in 2021, you know, rather than these transactional relationships. And I love what John said about, you know, Westchester Bank is about investing in relationship building. And I think all of us get that. So, you know, a new term that I like to throw out is co-opetition, and it's really collaboration among business competitors. So they're basically combining expertise, resources to be able to amplify their brand's reach. And so we see that gaining momentum in 2020, but I believe we'll see that again in 2021. I just want to share a really quick example, which I found fascinating. Last month, Burger King, I don't know if anybody saw this, but they launched a campaign. This is Burger King, to encourage people to order from McDonald's and other fast food chains. And so, you know, you have to scratch your head and say, why would they do this? This is an example of 1 + 1 = 3, and why these strategic partnerships are going to become even more important. So Burger King is really, this is like a show of solidarity. You know, we're all in it together. So it's really raising awareness and benefits the entire fast food industry, because clearly fast food industry and restaurants really needs everybody's support.
So true. So true. Thank you, Stacey. John, let me go back to you, speaking of what Stacey just mentioned and the need for small businesses to thrive and continue. And one of the biggest reasons that small businesses these days are failing or closing is because of the shortage of cash within their businesses. So my question to you is, what should small businesses do right now financially to prepare for success? And if they are seeking funds, how can they best position themselves to the bank?
Wiley, the best way to position themselves is to be able to provide the detail of their plan. Everybody recognizes that certain industries have been more impacted by the pandemic than others. So one, as a general statement to the market, I would say, if you don't have to spend money, try not to weather the storm. So really pare down your expenses. And secondly, be able to articulate what your plan is to get some revenue so that you would be able to ultimately pay any loan back to the bank. And that many times isn't just continuing to do what you're doing today. To Stacy's point, you have to reimagine, is there another way for you to do something a little different and be able to generate revenue, to be able to borrow money and continue to grow, and maybe your business takes a little left turn or a right turn with different sort of products or services that you can offer. So it's really examining your business and looking at not what you want it to be, but what is it? What is the fact? What is the truth? And how can you pare down unnecessary expenses? How do you try to reinvent yourself or your business to not only do what you do, but maybe there's other avenues that you have eliminated in the past to not try a new product or service, and maybe this is the time that you could generate. Look at what the restaurant businesses have done. When in-house dining was prohibited, they continued to do takeaway, and the takeaway became important. And the really clever restaurateurs had email addresses and were saying, here's what some of our specials are. We have a family dinner that we will charge, $39 or $20 a person. So they reimagined what their business was, and they and certainly the industry has reimagined. Who would have thought some of the restaurants that we've frequented would only be takeout? And that's what happened. So they reimagined themselves, and they did so for survival, and many have survived, some have not done as well. And so I think that's an important example of how do you reimagine? What else can I do? There might have been a business that, I never wanted to do that. That's a low margin business. But today, driving revenue is important. And while it might be low margin, it can still be profitable. So I think business owners really have to, and I think many in Westchester and most in Westchester have really looked at it, and they've done a very good job of reimagining themselves and trying to capture more revenue. So, but that would be my advice to any, and when you go to the bank, explain the plan and do so in detail. Banks make money when they make loans, not when they turn loans down. So there's a desire for banks to make loans. They obviously want to make loans they believe will be repaid. And the successful businesses, I've always been struck by the fact that they look at their business, they continue to have plans, they have contingency plans, and that's the mark of a successful business that can come in and say, look, I've been dealt a plate of lemons and I've got to make lemonade. How do I do it? And they are able to articulate what their plan is. Those are the businesses that get the loans. The businesses that say, hey, I'm in a pandemic, I'm strapped, I need your help, give me some money, that's not going to work, right? If you think about it, if somebody came to you and asked to borrow money and told you that, you would say, yeah, we know we're in a pandemic, but if that's the only thing you can tell me, how can I lend you money? But if they walk you through, I've cut these expenses, I now have another business line, here's what I'm trying to do, I think they have a very good chance of getting along.
Thank you so much for that information. That was so valuable and so well articulated. I mean, you broke it down in really plain English. Thank you so much. James, getting back to you, a lot of us are office staff people like myself, and suddenly all my employees are working at home. And you brought up an interesting point a moment ago about two-factor access. And, I experienced that when I'm logging on to my E-Trade account or something like that, where maybe I forgot the password or something. Can you explain a little bit how a regular office small business office can use two-factor access for their employees working at home? How does that work?
Yeah, sure. So two-factor authentication is what we call a cybersecurity control. It's another measure. It's another tool that you can put in place to keep you and your sensitive data and access to your tools and your remote systems secure. So just to define what two-factor authentication is, it's a system that will grant you access to whatever system it is that we're talking about. It's a software that will grant you access to whatever system we're talking about based on two things: a username and a password, right? So that's something that you know, but it's also based on something that you have. And that's typically in the form of either a cell phone where it can text you a code, or maybe an app that you've loaded onto your smartphone that will allow you to sync up these systems. So to give you an example, say for example, you have Microsoft 365, and a lot of people have Microsoft 365. Forever, historically, people would gain access to their email system based on a username and a password, right? So first of all, you should have a secure password. A secure password, and I mean, that's a subjective comment, I guess. But it should be at least 12 characters long. It should have uppercase, it should have lowercase, it should have symbols, it should have numbers, but it should be at least 12 characters long. I mean, if you ever go to any of those websites that say, how long would it take to crack my password? I think, and don't quote me on this, but something like, if you're over 12 characters long and you use the variation of the symbols that I was talking about there, it'll take something like 44,000 years with current technology to crack your password. However, that being said, you don't want to be solely dependent on a password, because if, say, for example, somebody gained access to my username and my password, and it's not hard to find out, certainly my username, I'm on social media, I'm a president of a company, I'm doing things like this. So, the bad actors, if they certainly wanted to target an attack, it's easy to find, James KUDLA, president, Tarrytech Computer Consultants. Hey, this guy might be a good target. Let me see if we can crack into his system. So they got your username. Everyone's username, or a lot of usernames, tend to be first initial, last name, company name, or first name, company name.com, whatever would be your email address. So if they were to gain access to your username, they could crack your password. There's nothing in place that's telling me, or there's things that you can do, but most people, I should say, don't have anything in place that's telling them that, hey, Wiley, somebody's reading your email, somebody's forwarding messages, somebody is sending messages as you don't know that. So we see, we have gotten calls, obviously, from clients and non-clients alike, where maybe an email system was compromised, and all of a sudden you're requesting money, or somebody is requesting money from you, and they're able to change your passwords, and they're able to gain access to your accounts through a username and a password. And they could be in your system for weeks, months at a time without you knowing, and doing recon on your system. What two-factor authentication does is, even if somebody were to gain access to my username and my password, when they go to log in with those two pieces of information, they can't log in because you have to gain access to that system through that thing that you have, right? So, talking to your service provider, find out what are acceptable methods, right? So it's either an app that you download. I don't know if you've ever heard of one called Duo, or Google has a free one. It's called Authenticator. And I mean, these are inexpensive. They're very easy to set up on your smartphones, iPad, or even you can send text messages to your phone as well. And certainly everybody has a cell phone. So my recommendation to you, or my advice to you, would be, find out the critical systems where you do not want that data compromised, right? So it's going to be your email system. It's going to be your remote access. It's going to be your financial systems, any of systems that contain PII information, personally identifiable information. You need to protect those systems. You could certainly contact your IT service provider. They can help you with this. But all of these companies too, they have help desk, so call Microsoft, call whoever's hosting your email, call Intermedia, call AppRiver, whoever it is, and say, hey, listen, I need to secure my email, and what two-factor authentication methods are available, and they'll walk you through it. Certainly something that we can help you with, but it's something that you can do on your own. And you need to address all of these, the surface area of your whole company. So email is not enough. Remote access isn't enough. Any of these SaaS solutions that I was talking about, where it's hosted, and you know, as an IT company, you know, 10 years ago, my job was to make sure that you had access to all of your stuff anytime, anywhere, on any device, right? And we did that quite well. But now we're finding out, maybe that wasn't so smart, because the bad actors also realize that they can do that. So it's not just securing your network; it's all of these, you know, SaaS solutions that exist on the cloud that by definition can be accessed anywhere. So make sure that you get two-factor authentication on those. That will make a significant improvement in your security posture for your company.
Thank you. If I can ask you one more question, because I know the viewers are probably asking that themselves. If you could put, say, per computer, a range of what it might cost for a project like that, is it somewhere between $100 to $500, or is it $100, or what can a person expect to pay per computer for you know, for better controls of access and things like that?
That's I'll do my best to answer that, but it's a pretty tough question to answer, because sometimes it's based on something that you're going to need to buy, right? And sometimes it's going to be based on defining that security policy and then implementing some of these security controls, right? So certainly, you know, a baseline audit, you know, say you're a company of 20 or 25 people, I would say a baseline audit of something like that, you should be spending a couple $1,000s just to get an idea, right? It's so important to at least know where you stand, right? Whether the remediation plan is going to cost you $100 or it's going to cost you $100,000, at least start with what you don't know, right? Because you don't know what you don't know, and sometimes that's the biggest exposure right there. So I would think that, you know, an audit's a good place to start. $2,000, $2,500, something like that, for a company of 20, 25 people would be a good place to start, and then you take it from there.
Thank you. And that brings me back to Susan for a quick moment. Susan, a lot of us are small businesses, and you know, and be frank, cost is always a factor in our lives. Is there such a thing as a manual for small businesses that could point them or give them direction in legal or where they should be, what types of things they should be posting, how should they be treating their employees? Is there a place where you can point us to, or that might, you know, give us some information, some knowledge?
You know, there's a lot of resources out there. A lot of small businesses belong to different business associations, a lot of industry associations. Certainly you have to make sure that it's a credible resource that you're relying upon. You know, certainly in this era, the state is putting out a lot of information as well. Your payroll company may have resources that you can rely upon also. That's a growing area where you can rely upon as a resource also. So there's just a tremendous amount of resources out there that can provide you with a tool at an efficient cost.
Yeah, I think our time is coming to a closure. We wanted to leave a few minutes at the end for some interaction between ourselves rather than just from me to you guys. So I'd like to take this moment to open the floor up for just, you know, general comments on JOANNE, STACEY, anything you might want to start us off with?
I just wanted to echo on what John TOLOMER said. You know, just in order to, it's really important to create different revenue streams and think out of the box. So I loved his idea. You know, of course, restaurants can't just, they can't survive, you know, without this, you know, curbside pickup. But I think, you know, think even past that. There's a company in, not a company, there was an initiative between retailers. It was somewhere out west, and they created this really cool thing. It was called City Box. So it was retailers, both restaurants and retailers within a certain geographic area, and they had these experience boxes. So one could be date night, and it was incredibly successful. Basically what they're doing is they're bringing the experience into your living room while you're at home, and the products range from coffee to jewelry to food. The benefit of this is that there's a real opportunity to monetize, because you can order, of course, nationwide. So again, it's a great revenue stream, and the partners actually plan to continue this after the pandemic. And again, it's also great because if customers want to support, let's just pick, Peak Skill. If customers want to support Peak Skill in general, they can support more than one business at a time. So I just wanted to share that extension of what John said.
And I think a common theme that we're all talking about is developing a preventive strategy, whether it's going to John and talking about what your plan is. And in the cyber risk area, we both hear about, making sure that you have the right insurance in place. And then also too, when you're talking about dealing with remote workers, making sure that we have the right plan in place. And then later we'll be talking about bringing those remote workers back into the workplace, making sure you have the right plan in place there as well. It's part of it is making sure that you're continuing to think preventive in nature and also too proactive in nature. And then the other part of it is certainly, Stacey, one of your fortes is positive communications.
As a past president of the Chamber of Commerce here in Sleepy Hollow and Tarrytown, I'm really encouraged by the fact that the businesses are trying to work together as a team. And we've been, as a chamber, trying to encourage them to do this. It's no longer a me thing. You have to think outside the box. You have to look at your neighbors, and you have to come up with a team plan, whether it's the restaurants putting flyers in with their takeout that encourage people to use the retail that's in town, or the retail encouraging people to use the restaurants. There are so many ways we can all work together and network together. And I think that's an important message, because if you try to operate that it's just your business and you're not going to make it. Right now, we need each other. And I think that's the one thing we're all learning from this, is to work better together.
There's no doubt, and I really like what you said about the me versus the we mentality. Also, there are some people, some businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic and feel like victims. And I always like to put a positive spin on it, because at the end of the day, it's like we've got to own it. We can all manifest and manufacture our own opportunities. Nobody's going to do it. And great to partner with other businesses, even if they are competitors. Like I said before, this is where 1 + 1 = 3.
So true. The community service, community involvement, it's all of us together. I'll give you the perfect example. After the first shutdown, when they started phasing things back open, I went to my barber shop. I really needed a haircut. I was so happy to see him, and I knew in my heart that he had been closed and shut out for months. I literally just gave him an enormous tip, just because I knew that it would help him, and he would take that money and go to the Stop and Shop or the CVS, and it would go back and forth through the community. And so we need to keep that attitude going. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments? James?
Yeah, I would like to add something to what Stacey had mentioned before too. I think you really have to look at your business and figure out what else can you do. And you made a comment to say, doing the same thing, you're going to get what you get, right? But I think that you did put an interesting spin on it. It's not going to be just you get what you get. I think it's going to be a little bit less, because the things that we were doing pre-pandemic, and that's not the case for every business, but for a lot of businesses, if you continue to do the same things, you may not get the same results. So I think you need to look at some different things that you can bring into your business, whether it's new sales, new marketing, new products, new partnerships. I like your term, co-opetition. You should trademark that. I haven't heard that before.
I don't think I'd be able to, but I'll try.
But I think it's a great term, and I really think that you have to focus on that. And earlier in this podcast, we were talking about going from survive to thrive, and you do need to do these things, and you need to take advantage of this time now, because there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Or at least I hope that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So what can I be doing today so that when things start to open up, man, I'm set to move forward quickly. So I think that that's a good point that you make, Stacey.
Thank you.
I would add to that, what we see, where if you just take the pandemic for a moment aside, the successful businesses and the successful business owners and the successful not-for-profits are constantly trying to do something a little different. And our feeling is, you know, if you're doing the same thing year after year after year, you're really falling behind. And so you have to kind of continue to reimagine your business and how you can do business and be more successful. The pandemic, I think, takes that to another level and should really make business owners think about what happens, what if. Clearly, no one thought of a pandemic. We've always thought about contingencies and what if this happens, what if that happens. In fact, we had done a desktop exercise about a business disaster recovery about 3 weeks before the pandemic took place. So we were very fortunate that that's something we do on an annual basis. We were prepared for a disaster recovery like this or a pandemic. But each business, you have to continue to look at how can I do business? How can I be more successful? And if you're doing the same thing, you're falling behind. You've got to continue to look at reimagining. And sometimes it's a tweak, and sometimes it's a new product. Sometimes it's a more drastic path. But the fact is, if you're doing we find that if you're doing the same thing, you're falling behind.
All right, well, thank you very much for your participation and your insights. I'm sure our viewers are taking away lots of valuable information, and hopefully soon our community will be back on track to where it was headed earlier this year, you know? So thank you. Amy, back to you.
Thank you, Allan.
Great.
Thank you, Allan.
914.
And 914 Inc. too.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To all of you. Again, I think we're in business as a business magazine to help share success stories and information that are going to boost and further the community, you know, the business community here overall. So I think this is a great step, and I'm really happy to share these insights with our readers and our web listeners. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Great day.
Have a happy holiday, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a happy
James, I'm
holiday.
gonna send you that stuff, James.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
And
Thanks.
if you need any help with your outfits, call me.
I'm gonna take you up on that, Stace. Bye, Susan. Happy holidays.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So good to
Bye-bye.
see everyone. Thank you again, Amy and Sam.
Bye, Joanne. Nice
Thank
to meet
you.
you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.